Oh, there we go. Okay. So there's four. One more. There we go. Welcome everybody on the live and the replay. We've got a very special program. Today's Australia Day. It's our third program, and all three have been from Australia. A beautiful, beloved sister. We're going to get to know. I don't know her, but I'm looking forward to getting to know her and picking her brain a little bit and finding out about her. She looks like she's full of sacred wisdom. But before we do that, we'll allow people time to come in. If these shows resonate with you, please share because we are getting hammered on Facebook and YouTube with the algorithms. But we do have a solution to that that's coming out very soon. You probably know what I'm talking about. But more about that later. We'll be right back in a minute and 19 seconds with our intro and allow people time to come in. Be right back. How's it going, everybody? We've got a beautiful sister in the house, Lia Scallon, who's, from what I understand, pretty well known in the lightworker community for her musical talent and channeling and harmonic light language, among other things. I've read a little bit of her newsletter tonight. Hello, Maureen Moss. How you doing?
Oh,
It's
hello,
good to
Maureen.
see you. She's a dear friend of ours. I love Maureen because she always tells me like it is. Yeah.
Especially.
Yes, he's a very dear. Yeah, and so I want to give a shout out to Melina Ferguson, who has brought us some really good names, and Leilani for setting this up. I had told Leilani there was a moratorium on shows, don't schedule anymore. I've got to decompress from our trip. I haven't had a day off in over 4.5 weeks. And tomorrow I'm going to, but she said that Melina had found someone. I said, make space. So welcome to the show. Thank you for coming in and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. And yeah, we're excited to get to know you.
Oh, that was me you were talking to.
Yeah, that was. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Very honored to have the invitation, Tom. Thank you so much for inviting me, and hello to everyone.
Yeah, you have the same frequency as Mary Rodwell and Marie Batchelor as I'm looking at you and listening to you. Yeah, I don't know where to start. A lot of times I'll start the show with when did you wake up?
Well, I woke up probably the mark year for me was 1990.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a while. And I returned to Australia after 3 years away. I was born in Ireland, came to Australia in 1992 and was here for 5 years. Then I went back and lived in London for 3 years and had a rather rocky personal period in my life. And so when I came back to Australia, I got sick. And like many other light workers, that was the catalyst for my sort of spiritual journey beginning. I had actually my channel, just to let everybody know what I suppose I consider myself a receiver and a transmitter of cosmic frequencies. So that comes through in the form of light language and melodies, sacred.
Wow.
So my channel did actually open sometime before that when I was at university in Ireland, and I'd come from a very sort of religious Catholic background, and so prayer was always very much part of my, daily life, as it were, and I had a sort of a strong spiritual streak, I suppose, because of the way I was brought up. But at this particular point in my journey, I was at university, my final year, and in a sort of prayer meditation setting, I started to get all these sounds and this language coming through me, and it scared the wits out of me at the time, really. And so I basically shut everything down. I had a lot to focus on. I had exams, whatever, so I just closed everything down. And it remained that way for several years, and really until I had this illness in 1990. And I really knew, I just had a knowing that this was not something that was purely physical, that it was much a deeper going on, that I had to really delve deep inside myself to find the answers to this, that it wasn't just going to be a pill that was going to fix me. So I did that, and as soon as I started that process, these light language melodies started to come through me. So I was a little bit older and wiser, I suppose, and I just decided to go with it and to surrender to this process. And I suppose what really encouraged me to do that is that the energy that was coming through with these frequencies, with these vibrational melodies and sounds, was really pure and very, very soothing, very healing. I really felt that instinctively these melodies and words were coming to help me heal.
Wow. That's what I was going to ask you. I'm probably you probably already answered this, but so I'm a big believer that whatever we, whatever we download, be it channeling or light language or whatever it may be, is first and foremost meant for us. And then there's a parallel, as the individual goes, so goes the collective. So there's always some type of frequency or message or code that, when shared to the collective, people can gain from. But do you feel that when it came in, although I'm sure it was multifaceted, that it had something to do with your healing?
Absolutely, Todd. For me, that seemed to be the primary function at that time. And what it did was open my mind as well. It opened my heart, it opened my mind, and it sent me on a path of exploration. And so I started then to look for information. So I started to do various courses, crystal healing, energy healing, shell essences, flower essences, kinesiology. And I went down this path of sort of, voracious reading about everything I could get my hands on, because I just found it so fascinating, and this thing that was happening to me. And it was quite a long period it was a full 10 years actually that I pursued that path, and I would describe it as a dark night of the soul for me in many aspects. There were many very beautiful lifting moments, but I had a lot to confront, I suppose. I had a lot of baggage, in terms of the religious dogma that I'd grown up with, and, the programming that we all grow up with. I had to question everything, basically. And so I took that very seriously, and it really impacted every aspect of my life. I had been pursuing a path in acting. Since I was at school, acting was the only thing. That was my first love and my first passion. But what I found was during this 10 years, during this process, that my passion for acting just started to wane. And interestingly, how things happen, of course, the universe devises it so that, if it wants you to go down a certain path, then you're kind of pushed that way, whether you like it or not. So the acting work began to sort of dry up a bit, and also my passion wasn't there anymore. So there was a sort of a long transition from one life to another, as it were. But then towards the end of that 10-year period, in the last 2 to 3 years or whatever, I began to realize that the message I was getting was that these sounds and melodies were going to be used for other people as well, that
Wow.
they were meant for me, that I was going to share them. And at that stage, I couldn't even think about how that might happen because that was 30 years ago. Nobody I came across was doing anything. I'd never heard the word toning. I'd never heard of anybody talking about like language, and I just thought people are going to think I'm absolutely
How long, I have so many questions, but I got to, since you said that, how many, how long did you wait before you, because it came in 19, well, you said it took like a 10-year period. How long
yeah.
was it before you actually did it in front of somebody?
Well, it was the end of 1999. I thought, I really was told that I needed to
Mm,
hard and just get out there. And so I was told to call the work Diamond Healing with the Sounds of Sirius.
okay.
So during that period, Todd, I had come to realize that I had an off-world connection, as it were, that I had this connection to Sirius, the star system Sirius.
Mm,
And so they told me that the work was to be called Diamond Healing with the Sounds of Sirius. And I saw this huge diamond placed in my third eye. And when I asked what the language was, they said it was the true language of Sirius.
wow.
Before language was recorded, it was the root of all languages. So I thought, okay, so I had a card made up. I put the diamond as a logo and I just called it Healing with the Sounds of Sirius. And then I decided that I'd experiment a little bit on my friends. So I had them literally, I hadn't even got a massage table at that time or anything. We had this refectory table and, dining table. So I pad the dining table up and people on the table. And I started to sing over them. And it was phenomenal because they just had this incredible response to these sounds. Would be crying, they would have all sorts of, invariably they saw waves of color, sometimes color they'd never seen before. They had past life experiences. They were having all of these things happen. So that really gave me the confidence to think, okay, there is something going on here and I do need to share these sounds. So I literally hired a room and set it up, made it a little sanctuary, put all sorts of beautiful things in there. And I basically opened my door for business. That was in the year.
Wow. Talk about a way shower's way shower.
It was scary.
I bet.
But, I just had to, and I think that's for a lot of us, we are guided by just our gut feeling about things and the message we receive in meditation or whatever. But for me, it's a compelling urge that I can't say no to. It just pushes me forward, and eventually I just have to say, okay, right, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what got us all here, where all the crazy people are. So it's some of the questions I'll ask is because there's a lot of people waking up now, by their own admission, not by somebody else's judgment. And a lot of the dynamics are the same, even though, like for you, it was 1999 or 1990 or 2000. And there's some real, I guess, challenges that people come up against. Now, you were of Catholic. You were Catholic and you were devout. And I've heard a lot of stories on this show, not just of Catholicism, but other religions as well. But Catholic seems to be a big one that people have to overcome. What was that like? Was that part of that 9 or 10 years, dark night of the soul, trying to let go of the old identities and the old belief systems as you were reading all these books behind you and really, expanding and opening up? Was it difficult for you to let go of those things?
It was absolutely huge, Todd. That was probably the most difficult thing because if you're an Irish Catholic in particular, your whole spiritual being is tied up with who you are, where you're placed in your family, and how you fit into society and your culture and everything. So it is a huge, big, thread in your being. So, I'm one of 8 children. My father was the eldest of 15, so I had all these uncles and aunts, squillion cousins, whatever. So, yes, I'm on the other side of the globe, but it's a very small world when you're in a large extended family like that that's very close. So, um, you're faced with a lot of choice and a lot of dilemma about how you proceed on your own personal path to seeking your own truth and your own integrity without hurting or damaging the relationships that you have with your. And that was really, really huge and ongoing to this day, really, to be honest. But of course, now I'm much stronger. I'm much more assured in my path and in my decision making. In those early years, I literally had to question everything. And had to question, every aspect of the God force and what that is. And, I'd always been very open-minded, I suppose, and I'd never sort of had barriers of race or creed, really. But, I really do honor my upbringing for the wonderful moral principles that it afforded, or the great sense of, I suppose, wrong, and for the great sense of, I suppose, humanity that engendered. I mean, basically, the way I was brought up, you think of everybody else before yourself, so, and it's overcoming I suppose, the denser aspects of yourself. Yes, when you realize the programming is a bit skewed and that, the whole thing of sin is actually a control mechanism, that, you wake up to a lot of stuff. But, there's a lot of good stuff there as well that I carry with me to this day, and that has really informed the way I behave in the world.
Yes, I agree with that. I was raised Catholic, and in fact, I was raised in South Texas, and the Roman Catholic Church is very, very strong down there. It's a Latin community, Mexican American, Spanish community, and big families. There's a lot of commonalities between the Irish Catholics and the Mexican American Catholics down in South Texas, but a lot of our priests were from Ireland. And that's back when they still did the sermons, or whatever you call them. I'm not a good Catholic, in Latin. But yeah, I can relate to what you're saying, because even though I didn't spend, but maybe 8-9 years, I did take it very seriously, and there was something about the iconic images that were familiar to me, or comfortable to me. And so when I woke up 9 years ago, that's how the universe first communicated to me, was through what we might call religious prophets, biblical prophets, and archangels and Magdalene, Jesus, that type of thing. But so yeah, I found it interesting too. Like I said before, there's been quite a few people come on here that were raised Catholic, and they made it a point to say that, both for the strengths and for what they had to overcome. That's why I kind of asked the question. Very cool. And what about, I'm always fascinated by the human aspects, challenges, and journey. And like in your case, that's a very powerful thing that happened to you. And it didn't happen in 2012 when there were communities developing to support you. And I know without saying that you had an uphill battle with family, because I know how the Catholic families are. They're very much about family. And I guess in a way, without mincing words, they can be in your business a lot, right? But was it a challenge for you, your human aspect, in terms of, and I don't mean this in the bad way, in terms of your ego? I mean, did you feel, because that's a divine connection, that's a divine channeling. And with your devotion that you had coming in the door, Did you have to check yourself? I mean, how did you deal with that?
Well, look, I think that's a really, really good question. And I think to this day, I think it's always a question of checking oneself
Yeah.
constantly. And ask yourself what your motivation for doing
Yeah.
something is. You always, because look, we're human, you know, and we always have to, I think, really question our intention and the purity of our intention, because it's we need our ego, you know, we wouldn't do anything if we didn't have an ego. So we absolutely need it. It's very, very important. But it's always just, I think, a fine line between letting the ego take over or listening to the higher self.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, like I said, it was a dark night of the soul, because I was physically sick to begin with. You know, I had like a chronic fatigue syndrome. I got glandular fever for the second time in my life. And that sort of just reduced me to this sort of low energy state. And that was where I began. But then, as I was experiencing this opening of my channel, it was also a huge learning curve for me, because, as we know, there are all sorts of energies out there. When you begin this process, you don't know. It's very, you're just so, I suppose, overwhelmed with what's happening. You don't perhaps have the discernment to know what energies to let through and what energies not to let through, as it were.
Mhm.
So sometimes other energies can slip in. What happened in my journey was that, because I suppose I was always a very sensitive person since childhood, I was really, really shy and very sensitive. I chose a profession which, you know, requires one, in a sense, was good training for being a channel, because you're channeling the energy of a character. So this opening of myself to this energy that was coming in, what happened actually was that, and I had a couple of people say to me, "My God, Leah, they are just lined up to get into you, to work, to be worked on." So are these other souls that are out there, perhaps souls that have not been able to transition to the next level or whatever, who hadn't quite detached from the physical realm, and were coming in a sense, to receive the healing through my body, through the
Right.
fire healing session or whatever. And so at times I would literally, and very, very a frequent thing was that I would literally be sobbing uncontrollably a lot of the time through these healing sessions, that I would go to have a healing session. And I thought, this can't possibly be all mine. Yes, I've had inner child stuff that I've had to deal with or whatever, but this can't possibly be all mine. So eventually it came to a point where I sort of twigged. And it came when somebody was working with me and they said, okay, I see what's happening. The angels have come in and they've said they are overriding your will. You need to make a decision, you know, about who and what you let into your body. And so that was the turning point for me, really, of my understanding that I didn't just have to open myself to everything that was coming through. And it also made me much clearer about setting my intention. So now, always before I open my channel, the command is that only energies of the highest and best frequencies be allowed to enter my vehicle.
Yeah.
And so, so that was a huge learning curve for me. And once I turned that corner, then things began to expand in a different way. And then, of course, once I started to work with people,
Hmm.
it was a that took place then.
That's a great point, because I know, I didn't reawaken until 2011, and I went through similar things, in that it was an open door, right? The souls coming in that needed help to get to the next level, and then, of course, incarnated people coming, and but the thing with the discernment of, because it was the same kind of thing. I wonder if this is common. You're having this awakening and this connectivity, and at the same time you're going through the dark night. So it's like you're carrying both ends of the spectrum, And because of the, what would I say, the vulnerability and newness, there were energies that I interacted with that were not of the highest and best. But what I was going to say is 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, you heard a lot about protection. People saying you need to protect yourself. And I've kind of seen that change over the last couple of years, almost like for the most part, we're fortifying our field to the point, or maybe our level of discernment's even gotten stronger, that type of thing. The other thing I find interesting too about what you're saying is this period of time, which I think because you were on the front wave of the front wave, what might have taken you 10 years is taking others months, a year, maybe not as long. But do you think, because I think this might be helpful to people, uh, a lot of times we look at these solitary episodes, these extended solitary episodes, which you know and I know, that if it's 10 years or 1 week and it's heavy, it can feel the same. And that's not to make light of the longevity that you went through during that period. But do you think that you were, in human terms, given that space by design to disassociate and to move into the etheric field to kind of, hone your skills and become familiar with what your purpose would be?
I think absolutely that's very, very true. I think, and I totally agree with you, people that are waking up now, they're learning all this stuff that took me 10 years to learn. They're learning it, in months or whatever. Or some of the younger people, of course, are coming in with not the same level of amnesia. And it's just a different time. I mean, a lot has changed, and literally that was 30 years ago when that started for me.
Yeah.
I think that space that you're talking about being given, absolutely. And I really, really do appreciate that. And one thing I'm very, very grateful for, actually, is the fact that I had never anybody in that 10 years time, and I saw a lot of healers and I interacted with a lot of people. Nobody used sand on me. So what that left me with was a certainty that what was coming through me was not imitated. It was coming solely through me. I hadn't learned it. I hadn't got the idea from somebody else. I didn't get inspired for anybody. It was coming through purely from me. And I'm very, very grateful for that, that they did it in that way so that I could have the confidence that I wasn't copying somebody,
Yeah.
or riding off somebody else's idea.
No, that'd be pretty hard to do that with what you're doing. This based on my experience, anyway, at least what I've been exposed to. Yeah, this is fascinating. So you went through really 10 years indoctrination, and then you opened up and started working with other people, which is fascinating because there are certainly many, many modalities, but the results of what your clients, at first your friends, were getting with the colors and the past life stuff, it's the same thing you can get from other types of, let's say, more conventional or more something that's used more, like what you were saying a minute ago about nobody showed me this. Well, there's a lot of people that are very gifted that have been on the show that are doing kind of the same thing, not to take anything away from it, because the results are what matters. But yeah, I think that's really interesting, because really I know a few people. I mentioned Shakina to you. I know a few others, but most of these came into it, much later than in the 90s. Really, I mean that's pretty prolific. Sirius is a big part of, I guess, my composition in terms of my journey. I don't know in terms of my soul lineage composition, but it certainly must have some place there. And it seems to be pretty much a constant in these light worker circles. I mean, you hear a lot about Pleiadians and Andromedans and the Arcturians, Lyrans, but Sirius always seems to be, to me, if I look at it in the field, it's like behind them. It's like everything came through Sirius to me. And I don't know, I'm not saying that's gospel, but have you received, along with your gifts and your skills and your higher sensitivities, have you received communication, do you feel, from uh, the Sirius star family? And if so, is there any specifics to it, or is it about what you're doing?
Well, early on in the piece, when I started to work with people, um, things, as I said, changed exponentially once I made the commitment to go out and set up this sort of healing space. And so, what I found happened quite rapidly within that for me was that I myself, while I was doing these sessions for people who were having their own experiences, of course, and in this 10-year process as well, what had happened was I had been opened up to the crystal family. And, the first crystal that was ever put into my hand was a rose quartz, and it felt like
Wow.
it was my hand. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is this energy? And so that sparked crystals, and I started a whole adventure with the crystal realm as well. So when I started to work on people, it involved the use of crystals. So I had collected crystals over the years. And so in these sessions, it was completely improvised, as it were. So I would have a certain format, of course. I would, tell people what was going to happen, and then they would lay on the table. And then during the course of that, while I was singing on them, crystals would invariably be laid on them and various parts of their body. And invariably, they were the parts of the body that needed work when they would give me the feedback later. But during this time myself, what I became aware of, one day, for example, I was working on someone and I felt myself in this priestess energy. And then I saw and felt this snake anklet around my ankles. And I knew that I had been an Egyptian priestess in former life. Now, during that 10-year period, I hadn't really gone into past life stuff much. So, and, I'm to this day, I'm not a sort of huge one about going into past lives. I think, yes, it is very, very useful. And in fact, I have one storyline going through my life at the moment, which is very much to do with the past life thing. But I think the past life thing, because if you look at time anyway, it's not really linear. So is it all happening at the one time? Are we having these experiences on multiple levels of existence? So is this happening at the same time as our 3D existence? So any past life situations, I suppose, that come up, I feel are to point us to what we might need to be looking at in this incarnation that we're going through right now.
Yeah.
But that Egyptian priestess experience was a kind of a culminative point for me, because through my childhood, as I said, I've had this, very conventional religious upbringing in a way, but I was always fascinated by Egypt. No idea why, but I always had this fascination with all things Egypt. I wanted to be Cleopatra. I just thought the whole Egyptian thing was amazing. And so it wasn't until all those years later that I began to realize, okay, there's a reason why I had that fascination with Egypt all those years ago. Because when I found out about my connection to Sirius, of course, I learned about the very strong line of connection between Sirius and Egypt. The king's chamber in the Great Pyramid is aligned with Orion, and the queen's chamber is aligned with Sirius. And the whole heliacal rising of Sirius coincides with the flooding of the Nile. So the whole sacred rituals of Egypt, in a sense, were connected with Sirius. So one of the other things that happened through these sessions was those one day early on in the piece, and the room was encircled by these very tall, 12 very tall light beings. I saw them as just, and I knew that they were the Council of Sirius. It's one of those things, the information is given to you through unknowing. And over the years, I've been told on a number of occasions that I am one of the Council of Sirius myself, so they work very closely with me. So that energy is ever present. But through the years also, I have become aware, of course, of the other star systems, the Pleiades, Orion, and all of these other starseed connections that people have had, and they feel very compatible with me.
Yep.
For me personally, I feel that my connection to Sirius is very strong and very powerful. It's at the base of what I do. But I don't have an emotional attachment to it. I feel that that is the gateway through which I entered in this incarnation. And in fact, there was a Lazarus quote. The channel Lazarus wrote a book. And in that, he said something like, Sirius is the birth canal through which all energy enters your universe.
Yeah.
It is the energy of your very soul.
Yeah.
For me, as the years have gone on, I feel that somehow Sirius is the gateway I came through, but I am from beyond, beyond. So from the source, as we all are, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. That totally, I can totally relate to that. That's essentially, in a better explanation, what I was saying earlier. I see Sirius behind it, almost like a hub. I think a birth canal would be better, in that almost like a toroidal, like a tuba on the other side, and it sucks into the canal and comes out, and now we have our galaxies and our universe and so on, solar system and everything. But I totally get that, and I also love what you said too. And I want to just go back and restate these two things, because I do think it's important for somebody who's been doing this for 30 linear years plus, because there's a lot of credibility there, and that they don't feel so challenged. Because one, I love what you said about the past life memories. Yes, they're there. Do we really know what they are? I don't know. Am I tapping into a fractal of infinite intelligence, or is it my own soul lineage? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because I think what you said is so important. There's something that's being presented to you, and it's being presented to you for a reason. Maybe your opening code in that moment, or maybe it's going to propel you into some research, or somewhere to find it or develop it. And then I think the other thing that you said that's very important is in regard to Sirius, and how you said that the other planetary and star systems came into the fold, and you can feel familiarity with them, and you can feel the congruence, but you're not attached to any of it. And I think that's really important, because so many people are getting hit with this infinite intelligence mainline coming in all different ways, because the universe communicates to each one of us in a different way, and it is a challenge. It is a challenge, and we've spent enough time, and you know this because you did it yourself, simultaneously, I might add. We spend enough time being handicapped by our attachment to the traumas of the past. And in it, even though it doesn't seem fair or it doesn't seem equitable, we can be just as handicapped by an over attachment, over identification to these faces of the universe that are giving us this code. We are the center of this whole thing. And whatever our composition is, I'm sure we'll find out when it's all over. But oneness is oneness. And I think it's important to just restate what you said, because there's a lot of wisdom in that, and a lot of people can benefit from that, especially those that are waking up now. And I'm sure you've dealt with that when you've had, over the years, people that you might have approached or touched, and then they come back, a year later, and they say, "Oh my God, you don't know what's going on." You know what I mean? You get those people that are like, and I did it, and you might have done it. And I always tell them, get over the wow. It's time to get to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really, really true. It's just, I thought of something. It was like my husband said, when he was young, he had this person ask him, "So what are your goals? What's your 5-year goals? What's your 10-year goal?" And he said, "I don't have any goals. I don't have any goals." He said, if I have a goal to be, the best creative artist in, Sydney or something like that, I might miss out on the opportunity of being Prime Minister of Australia, So that's it. If you set if you remain fixed and focused on just one thing, then you're curbing your expansion.
Exactly.
I think for me, more and more, and it's very interesting as my own journey expands, as I suppose I offload more of my own program. That's an ongoing process.
Yes.
The more expansion that happens, and now I'm getting, it's not just like when I ask, what is this language? It's not one language anymore, it's multiple languages. So the frequencies that are coming through me are many and varied. And I believe they're coming from different parts of the cosmos. So where are they coming from? The best answer I can give myself at that moment is that they are coming from source.
Yeah.
That sounds from source and the different aspects of source. They're not necessarily just from Sirius or just from the Pleiades or whatever. Those are gateways, I feel, and that we are all from the great central source. And this journey that we're going through, this journey of awakening that we're having, is a process of remembering.
Yeah.
Are.
Yes.
And bit by bit, and I think these, for example, the past life things, I've been following this storyline in a sense, or been following the breadcrumbs on a number of different stories since 2012, interestingly, which was a huge year for me. And it started off several threads of sort of exploration. But one of them was my connection with the She, the Irish fairy folk. I go to Ireland every year to see my parents who were getting older and all of that. So it was really not until 2012 was probably the first year when I really dipped my toe in the water more seriously in terms of the Irish sacred sites and explored my own heritage and what lay there. But there the Egyptian connection came in again. What I discovered and what I believe now, 99.9% sure, is that one oversoul aspect that I have is the Queen Tea Tefe, who was an Egyptian princess who became High Queen of Ireland. And so I've been following that thread, which is linked with the She information. She, in a sense, she led me to them first, and then they led me to her in a way.
Wow.
So those stories have been interwoven and have proven to be extraordinary, the stuff that's come. But so in that way, the past life story has actually been very, very valuable because it's led all sorts of really important information and understandings about the sacred sites of the planet, about the crystalline grid of the planet, and about the interconnection of all of these things.
Yes. Good
so
point.
In that way, a past life scenario can be very useful.
Absolutely. As can the cosmic and galactic and angelic connections. I mean, I guess where I hold myself to be careful and cautious is not to become distracted or over identify to the point where it's diminishing my presence, I am presence in my current role, because I've been this, and I'm the same with what you were talking about with the Egyptian thing. I mean, I had this you know, it was more than a hobby. It's just reading about Native Americans, and it didn't really dawn on me, just like it did with you, until after I woke up. So I have pulled, I still pull from that field. You know, 3 spirit guides, all were relatives, father, uncle, and a brother. I still pull on them, even though I know that somehow or another they're embodied within me. You know, I struggle sometimes when I lay down at night with my wife to connect, and I'm like, who am I talking to? But what I've done, and I wanted to ask you about this, it's a nice segue. Is so I've been working on some healing. Not nothing major, just healing in my body, just looking at my body, looking at my organs, looking at, my circulatory system and just different things. And I've called on, because they came in early, 8 or 9 years ago. They came in as the blue light healers, which later on I came to understand they were Arcturians. So when I lay down, I'll go, I'm going to call on my Arcturian blue light healers, as opposed to externalizing them, because I'm still dealing with, embodying everything, accepting that the universe is all inside of me. Do you struggle with anything like that? How do you see things? Do you see things as external? Is everything inside of you?
That's a difficult question in a way. When I go into channeling or meditation or whatever, very often I will be taken on a shamanic journey.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, I have what I feel. Now, is it my imagination? Are they really there etherically? I feel that I have a group of Australian grandmothers around me.
Wow.
And this is very connected with what is going on at the moment here in Australia. Also, since the beginning of the year, I've been bringing through what sounds like some Aboriginal words coming through in my channeling. So are those grandmothers real? There are indications that there are other spirit beings around. I think the best way maybe you can, I suppose, reconcile it is that, yes, we are not the only one spirit of the universe. Yes, we hold it all inside us, but that oneness has many manifestations.
Yeah.
One has many fragments. Just like we are several billion people on this planet, we are all one, but we are all individual and unique manifestations of that oneness. So now that the veil is dropping between worlds and the veil between dimensions is dropping, I think perhaps we are even more and more easily able to access the other, I suppose, fragments in other dimensions as well as this dimension.
Yeah.
And so I do call, I suppose it is a human thing as well. We're used to feeling the need for assistance, I suppose. So we call on those beings or those light energies that we feel can assist us and can anchor us. For me, at the beginning, my work in particular from the get-go was very much the angelic realms and the Divine Mother. So I felt all of the channeling that was coming through me was coming from the Divine Feminine. And to this day, I will ask that the Divine Mother make me a pure and perfect conduit for her song of love for humanity, which is what I believe is coming.
Yeah, that's who I serve.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you said too, because that's why I love this job. I have the best job in the universe, because it's like a session every time I can. But yeah, because it's, my wife has a saying, a copy's a copy's a copy. And yeah, I remember talking to her on the phone 5 years ago, the first time I ever talked to anyone about these things. And I would say, okay, but you're there and in Australia and I'm here. And then I'd see this cord, in the third eye, this cord connecting us. And I was like, how does this all work? But I think you're right. I think as more and more the veils are falling, it's a copy of what we already have. There's 7.7 billion of us. Yes, they're all mirrors of me, but there's still a uniqueness to the soul. And that's pretty powerful. I'm only going to be Todd one time, as far as I know. And so, that's another thing that I think about a lot too, is why are we conscious here 99% of the time with what's changing now, but with less than 1% of our consciousness, of our multidimensional aspects? There's got to be something really big about this journey. And maybe that's a bias and maybe that's an attachment, but it sure seems like we're onto something here.
Yes, it does. And so many channels through the years have said, and is it wishful thinking? Do we want to just make ourselves feel better? That this planet, this experiment, as it were, is a very unique one. And this is why we've got so many souls on the planet now. This is why we've got so much extraterrestrial interest in
Yeah,
us. That what happens here will reverberate out through the cosmos, as it were. So the situation we're in right at this moment, when we're all going incredible shift in consciousness
yeah,
over there, like the end of the world in one way and totally surreal. But the flip side of that, of course, is that we're on an accelerated path, hopefully, to mass awakening.
yeah.
So the interest in our galactic, or that our galactic neighbors have in this, seems to be very high.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
I mean, we're, there's no doubt that what we're doing is affecting all timelines and dimensions. And it's not just our own aspects out there. It's everything. And I like what you said about the interest that they have. We've been blessed to get David Icke on here next month, November 18th. And I'm really looking forward to it because I want to have this conversation on a conscious level in regard to what's not really talked about, in my opinion. Let's just say in disclosure platforms or conspiracy platforms. Now, you will in the lightworker platforms, but they're not quite as, they don't gain the publicity that the other two do. And that would be to have a conversation like we're having, where we look at the credibility. If we just use this show, for example, 2,350 shows, many people coming on this show talking about their interactions with everything from galactics to elementals to angelics to dragon energy. We're talking apparitions, visitations. I mean, not the salacious National Enquirer-ish type of stuff. We're talking about soul expansion. We're talking about self-empowerment, and we're talking about something huge is happening. And in contrast to what grabs the headlines, even in these off the mainstream and off the alt news platforms. And I think it's going to be an invigorating conversation like this one, because it's becoming more and more accessible to people, I believe, because so many people are stepping up now. And I just got to say this, because it's coming from the heart. And for people like you and people like Maureen that were out there doing it, and not just doing it, not just doing the grid work and the channeling and the communion and the connection in solitude or in anonymity, but actually stepping out there. And stepping out there could be, in 1999 and 2000, pre-internet boom, just getting your card printed and saying, "Friends, come over and let's give this a shot." I mean, this takes a lot of guts, especially when you consider the energetic mm, presence that still remains and is fading more every day, of the oppression and the suppression, particularly of the divine feminine mother goddess energy. And I'm talking about, witch burnings, what they called witch burnings, or murders and rapes, and just the overall oppression and killings. I mean, that still lives in our DNA. And so it's a special time. And I believe this year has been, we've seen a real palpable rise in the feminine energy, uh, the goddess energy. Do you see that happening?
I absolutely do, Todd, and I think that's a very different thing than the feminist thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's projected in the 3D realm. It's a much deeper and more beautiful unfoldment than that. And like I said, really, my journey from the get-go was very much the divine feminine, was very much a part of it. Without me knowing what that meant, I had no idea
Mm-hmm.
really what that meant. I'm still only working things out really as I go along, and things are beginning to make a lot more sense now. All of those things I might have had to do in the past. But this Queen Tea Tefe journey that I've been on, for example, I was supposed to be in Ireland in June with a group. It was a privately invited group, and I thought initially it was just going to be a group of very close friends, because this is such a powerfully important journey for me personally. But it ended up it was going to be 30 people going to Ireland. And I felt that aspect of her, when she had come to Ireland, she'd become High Queen of Ireland. She came with the prophet Jeremiah, and they came with the Ark of the Covenant, the breastplate of the High Priest, and the Lia Fall, interesting, spelled Lia, Fall, which is the Stone of Destiny, and the Harp of David. So they came with the most sacred objects of the, Judaic tradition, as it were. She was originally born on the house of David, and then when they had to flee to Egypt, she was then adopted by the Pharaoh of the day and became an Egyptian princess.
Yeah.
She came to Ireland at a time when, the god, everything had gone to hell in a handbasket, basically. They were worshipping false gods, the god Baal and whatever. And so it is said, she was a live historic queen. This is not just a myth. She arrived in Ireland in the year 583 BC, and with Jeremiah. And it's said that she brought with her, or she basically reestablished the law of God in Ireland. Now, what I've come to understand, I don't know why I'm telling you this on this show.
No, this is good. This is very good. Yeah.
I haven't shared this story sort of publicly. But there was obviously something that she couldn't do in that timeline, right? So she is my oversoul. That's what I've come to see. So why would she, I kept thinking, why now? What is this? What am I supposed to be doing? What's all this stuff about the Stone of Destiny? But what I came to understand over several years is that the time had come for her to fulfill the last role, or the last bit of her role, basically, which was basically to re-anchor the energy of the divine feminine in Ireland, and from there, basically, to ripple it out through the planet.
Yeah.
So that was supposed to happen in June this year. What did happen is that it actually happened remotely, because we were supposed to do a ceremony on the 21st of June, which was the anniversary of the date of her inauguration as High Queen of Ireland, which basically, the other interesting thing about her, the parallels in this lifetime, I was born on the first hour of the 22nd of June. So basically, even in this lifetime, I'm following her path. And there are multiple other things as well that...
you can't make this shift up.
For example, I was born under the flag of Ulster, which is the red Ulster with the Star of David, which was the between Tea and the High King that she married. That was their flag. I was born under that flag in this lifetime.
Wow.
So, and many other things that point to the synchronicity between my life and this incarnation and her life then. So I believe that I did a sort of a global meditation on solstice, which was the day we were supposed to do that. And I believe we really, really did go deeply into anchoring the sacred feminine of Ireland. Now, whether that happens in the physical now, or whether what was meant to be done is done, remains to be seen. But I think this is the level that the divine feminine is at now. It's not like burning bras and,
No.
the men and, men for what they...
No. No, it's the, I can tell you I'm on my own journey with it. And I've been with Morgan 5 years. And of course, she's a physical representation of the energetic occurrences. Let's put it that way. So, but especially recently, especially since June 1. I mean, I literally walked out of the house in June 1 going, this is a different world. And since that time, there's been a lot of stuff go on within our relationship within myself. And of course, it's following the collective, which is it's a destruction of the patriarchal imprint on both men and women. In my own case, it's been an absolute surrender after surrender after surrender to the goddess, and this is not to an individual. This is to, and this just happened to be in the last week, which was as we lay there every night. A lot of times we don't talk. Sometimes she'll channel. Very rarely will I say anything. But what I've been getting the last 3 or 4 or 5 nights has been it's beyond surrender. It's actually a oneness where allowing the goddess to show the way. And that sounds very literal, but what I came to understand 2 or 3 nights ago, that it was actually allowing the feminine in me. Now, I don't know how it works beyond this realm. But we all know in this realm that the patriarchal got out drunk and disorderly. So I don't know what that means, but what I do understand that there's a masculine in me that is a creator and very powerful and very passionate and very strong, but that it acquiesces to her. Show me. You show me, and let, then, through my inspiration, I will perpetuate our creation, basically. But so I think and I've seen this happen too in the last 2 or 3 months on this show, where there have been a lot of women. We just had an incredible lady, Saskia, who lives in Wales, came on yesterday. This is someone who, since I came off the streets in 2013 and got a laptop, I connected with her. A lot of people were following her, very low profile, very organic. And yesterday she came out on camera for the first time ever. We were deeply honored. So there's a lot of these feminine energies that are predominantly in a feminine physical incarnation that have been doing work for years and years and years, who are now stepping up. And then over the last couple of months this year, I've seen these kind of, I would say, a more aligned masculine frequency starting to step up, soft but strong. And we all know, anyone that's been in these communities for the last few years knows that the women have been leading the way. And here we go. So I didn't mean to run over, but I'm having such a good time talking to you. And I wanted to offer you, before we head out of here, and there's no rush, but if there's anything that you would like to do, if you would like to channel or bring in a message or do the things that you do, or if there's some commentary that you would like to add, anything you would like to get out there, any messages or anything like that, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm just thinking perhaps the invitation to channel may be appropriate.
Okay.
So you just give me 1 second and I'll tune in. So while people are waiting, just please tune in your own heart frequency. Just bring your attention to your high heart, just placed just above your physical heart. And just sit there and keep in mind what Todd has been speaking about, the divine feminine, which is at the base of everything. She is the creator. Everything comes from the creator goddess. We all, male and female, and we must be balanced. We must have the equal feminine and equal masculine energy within us to be within balance. But we bow to the Mother Goddess. So I ask her now to speak and to sing through me, if that's what she wished to do, that she touch your heart and bring you a special and personal message in this moment. Iwahele se arene tsuyu ahele maru kale watsu. Indruse alakala zudianda karituta estenuma. Indruse alakratse utindrika tu serenato ki hondo teshe. Yasu ko hari atu tena, e sera, orruyo sera ki tendo ko horo te teno moro cheku. Yasu sarà tutto lo curaio sia al polo. Ya tukea te harwa se. Ki harwa se harwa. Indukera aria tute soya tune. Induko haria tu se tuna. Indaru koshe kusha tena. Induko hala soyoto kono. Inzaru koryutso korya tenu. Inda syaruto yonde kara. Yande kojate. Induse kara. Yatukashe. Inde dusye. Yoto seratena. Yonda.
So it is. Whew. Wait, let me slow my Kundalini down. That was powerful. That was very unique and very, very powerful, very familiar too. No doubt.
Interesting, Todd. A lot of people find the familiarity, and that, I think, reminds us that this is coming from the place of origin, the place where our souls began.
Yeah.
The journey.
Well, Wow, you are special. You are a breath of fresh air, breath of fresh cosmic galactic Sirius air. And a lot of Mother Mary. A lot of Mother Goddess, Mother Mary. Yeah. Thank you so much. What a great way to end 4.5 weeks of working without stop.
Well, hopefully you'll get a good sleep
Oh, I
tonight.
will. I'm not complaining. I'm going to take tomorrow off, but I'm with you, Joe. I have never seen this woman before, although I know her very well. That's exactly how I feel. So I don't know if we're from the same branch of the tree of life or what, but everything you talked about resonated with me. The Ireland, Catholicism, the Egypt, the Sirius, the whole 9 yards, and fairy. Yes, Janine. We can't forget that. I'd love to collaborate with you again sometime. You've got so much to offer, and we just scratched the surface. But yeah, if you're open to it, we'd love to check in with you from time to time and see if we can pick up some code from you and have some fellowship.
Would love to do that, Todd, and I honor you for everything that you're doing to, enlighten people, to bring people information that their souls are craving, I think, particularly at this time. So thank you for the amazing work that you are doing.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I look forward to collaborating with you again and again and again.
Love to.
Peace out. Take
Peace
care.
out. Okay.